Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening today. This is the RX Daily Dose. Today's episode is being recorded on Friday, November 28th, and I'm your host, Ian Parnagoni. We update this podcast every week for healthcare providers, medical professionals, and anyone who has an interest in drug updates. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcast platforms and social media, including iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. All links can be found in the show notes below. I hope everyone had a great turkey-filled Thanksgiving. I know I did. And between us, I'll probably be spending the next week recovering. And if you're lucky and have time off, enjoy it. And if you're like most pharmacists I know, though, including myself, you're working. So relax. It's a post-Thanksgiving slump this weekend. We have a few updates from the FDA to get through, as well as a topic that came up in the news this week, so let's get right into it. On November 20th, the FDA approved the second ever drug based on a Nobel Prize-winning technique known as RNA interference. The product, called Givlaari, going by brand name Givlaari, is used to treat a rare genetic condition called acute hepatic porphyria. The product comes with a high price tag, though, somewhere around $500,000 a year. But it's the first gene therapy with this indication. Acute hepatic porphyria, known as AHP, is a family of ultra-rare genetic diseases categorized by debilitating, potentially life-threatening attacks and, for some patients, chronic manifestations that negatively impact daily functioning and quality of life. How this works: the genetic disorder causes a buildup of toxic porphyrin molecules, which are formed during the production of heme, which helps bind oxygen to blood. Long-term complications of AHP can include chronic neuropathic pain, hypertension, chronic kidney disease, and liver disease. The FDA approval of Givlaari was received in less than 4 months after acceptance of the NDA, and was based on positive results from the Envision Phase 3 study, a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled multinational study of 94 patients with AHP at 36 study sites in 18 countries, the largest ever interventional study conducted in AHP. In Envision, AHP patients on Givlaari experience 70% fewer porphyria attacks compared to placebo. The most common adverse reactions that were reported in at least 20% of patients with Givlaari were nausea and injection site reactions. Givlaari was reviewed by the FDA under priority review and had previously been granted breakthrough therapy and orphan drug designations in the U.S. The next FDA approval happened on November 21st as part of Project Orbis. We talked about Project Orbis back in episode 3. It's an initiative between regulatory bodies in Canada, Australia, and the U.S. to collaborate on review, leading to simultaneous approval of products in all 3 countries. The FDA granted supplemental approval of acalabrutinib, going by brand name Calquence, for treatment of patients with chronic lymphocytic leukemia or small lymphocytic lymphoma. CLL and SLL are similar cancers, but they occur in different areas of the body. CLL occurs mainly in the blood and bone marrow, while SLL occurs mainly in the lymph nodes. Both are cancers of lymphocytes, which are the type of immune cells that help the body fight infection. Symptoms of CLL or SLL include low red blood cell counts, low platelet counts, fatigue, enlarged lymph nodes, and a higher risk of infection. The supplemental approval of Calquence for patients with CLL or SLL was based on 2 randomized clinical trials that compared Calquence to other standard treatments. The first clinical trial involved 535 patients with previously untreated CLL. Patients receiving Calquence had a longer progression-free survival, That's the amount of time a patient stays alive without the cancer growing, compared to patients receiving other standard treatments. The second clinical trial included 310 patients with previously treated CLL. Patients receiving Calquence also had a longer progression-free survival than patients receiving other standard treatments. The most common side effects of Calquence were anemia, neutropenia, upper respiratory tract infection, thrombocytopenia, headache, diarrhea, and musculoskeletal pain. Patients may experience atrial fibrillation and flutter, and should be monitored for symptoms of arrhythmias. Patients may experience serious infections and should be monitored and treated promptly. Patients should also be monitored for bleeding and managed appropriately. Patients may also experience low blood counts and should have blood work monitored regularly. Patients should be advised to use sun protection as other malignancies such as skin cancers and other solid tumors have occurred in patients taking Calquence. The FDA advises healthcare professionals to tell females of reproductive age to use effective contraception during treatment with Calquence. Women who are pregnant or breastfeeding should not take Calquence because it may cause harm to a developing fetus or newborn baby, or cause delivery complications. The FDA this week also approved the fifth biosimilar for adalimumab. The original product goes by brand name Humira, and this biosimilar approved will go by brand name Abrilada. According to a press release from Pfizer, approval of Abrilada was based on review of a comprehensive data package demonstrating biosimilarity of the drug to the reference product. This included data from a clinical comparative study which found no clinically meaningful difference between Abrilada and the reference in terms of efficacy, safety, and immunogenicity in patients with moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis. In addition to RA, Abrilada is indicated for juvenile idiopathic arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, adult Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, and plaque psoriasis. Common adverse events in adalimumab clinical trials include infection, injection site reactions, headache, and rash. Pfizer said that it is, quote, working to make Abrilada available to U.S. patients as soon as feasible based on the terms of our agreement with AbbVie. Our current plans are to launch in 2023. This is the 26th approved biosimilar in the U.S. to date. The FDA also approved a dissolving oral film form of riluzole called Exservan that is able to be taken by ALS patients without the need for water. Riluzole was the first ALS treatment approved by the FDA over 2 decades ago. Its exact mechanism of action isn't fully understood, but it appears to have a number of effects on neurons, including blocking certain receptors that are associated with neural damage. Strong evidence supports this medication helping ALS patients to live longer, and studies suggest that riluzole is most effective here in those with more advanced disease. Riluzole is approved as a pill sold under the brand name Rilutech, with generic versions also available, and in a liquid form under the brand name Tiglutic. The novelty of Exservan, developed by Aquestive Therapeutics, is the ease of its administration. Exservan consists of a thin film that is placed on the tongue. It dissolves and releases its active ingredient, riluzole, to be absorbed by the body in much the same way a pill or capsule would be. Importantly, Exservan can easily be taken without water or other liquids, easing the therapy's delivery to ALS patients who have difficulty swallowing, a common disease symptom. According to its FDA label, Exservan comes as a 50 mg riluzole dose on an orange film and is recommended to be taken twice daily, at least 1 hour before or 2 hours after a meal. This film adheres to the top of the tongue and dissolves, allowing the medication to be swallowed with saliva. It was developed using Aquestive's PharmaFilm technology, which, according to the company, optimizes the way treatments can be given for ease of use and better adherence. Previous clinical trials demonstrated that Exservan had an equivalent pharmacokinetic profile to Rilutec, as well as a good safety profile. The FDA granted Exservan orphan drug status in early 2018 and announced it was reviewing a request for approval of this new formulation in April of 2019. An FDA decision was expected on November 30th, but came days earlier. Last week, if you remember, we talked about the approval of Adakveo to reduce cell sticking in sickle cell disease. On November 25th, the FDA granted accelerated approval to Vaccination, going by brand name Oxbryta, for the treatment of sickle cell disease in adults and children 12 years of age and older. That's just 10 days after the Adakveo approval. Manufacturer Global Blood Therapeutics has hailed Oxbryta as the first approved treatment that directly inhibits sickle hemoglobin polymerization, the root cause of sickle cell disease. Sickle cell disease is a lifelong inherited blood disorder in which blood cells are abnormally shaped, characteristically a crescent or sickle shape, which restricts the flow of blood vessels and limits oxygen delivery to the blood tissues, leading to severe pain and organ damage. It is characterized by severe and chronic inflammation that worsens vaso-occlusive crises, during which patients experience episodes of extreme pain and organ damage. Non-clinical studies have demonstrated that Oxbryta inhibits red blood cell sickling, improves red blood cell deformability, and improves the blood's ability to flow. Oxbryta works by keeping hemoglobin more oxygenated, thus helping the red blood cells stay round and mobile. In the clinical trial that led to approval, 51% of patients on a high dose of Oxbryta had a significant increase in hemoglobin, compared to 6.5% on placebo. Despite the way Oxbryta works, however, it did not significantly reduce the frequency of pain crises, or improve a patient's assessment of their quality of life. Common side effects for patients taking Oxbryta were headache, diarrhea, abdominal pain, nausea, fatigue, rash, and fever. And one newsworthy item from this week, the CDC announced as part of their weekly morbidity and mortality reporting on November 22nd that they are updating recommendations for use of pneumococcal vaccinations in older patients. And just to level set on this, there are two vaccines available, PCV13 and PPSV23. The number in the vaccine refers to how many strains the vaccine protects against. And the recommendations have changed frequently. In 2014, CDC recommended that older adults receive both PCV13 and PPSV23. In the new recommendations, older adults should still receive a single dose of PPSV23. However, now, a shared decision between provider and patient is recommended for administration of PCV13. When patients and vaccine providers, including pharmacists, engage in shared clinical decision-making to determine whether PCV13 is right, considerations may include the individual patient's risk for exposure and the risk for pneumococcal disease for that person as a result of underlying medical conditions. If the patient does receive the vaccination, CDC said it should be administered first, followed by PPSV23 at least 1 year later. Some groups of older adults are still vulnerable to pneumonia, including those who reside in areas with low childhood PCV13 uptake, and could especially benefit from the PCV13 vaccination. In the report, CDC said providers and practitioners caring for many patients in these groups may consider regularly offering PCV13 to their patients age 65 or older who have not previously received PCV13, including those in nursing home. And that's all I have for this week. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll include all links and resources in the show notes below, so please go back and check those out too. Please connect with me on any of your social media platforms and give me feedback on what you listened to today. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. And as always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Music by Joseph